What's shaking, everyone? It's Don Khan-Swaylo here. So, the pay-swilling simps on the left would have you foolishly believe that Black Lives Matter is just a loose collective of groups with no governing body, no formal leadership. I find that to be categorically false, and I believe I can make a fair argument for that today. So, in the beginning, there were three organizers that initially founded the BLM movement. Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi co-founded the Black Lives Matter movement when George Zimmerman was acquitted in 2013 for fatally shooting Trayvon Martin. They created the hashtag, which spread like wildfire. Patrice actually had an interview in 2015 that came out not that long ago, where she straight out said that her and Alicia are classically trained Marxist. Whatever the fuck classically trained is. A little background on all three. Garza, Cullors, and Tometi all have Bachelor of Arts degrees, and Cullors and Tometi actually have their master's degree in arts. Just in case you had any lingering doubts that an arts degree doesn't mean anything more than just having a overpriced wall dressing that also doubles as a one-way ticket to a concentration camp. I have this article pulled up because there's an interview here that actually has a few telling quotes. So Cullors, 31 at the time, of Dignity and Power Now, an organization focused on helping incarcerated people and their families, went off when she found out about Zimmerman's acquittal. I was hopeful, and probably naive, that Zimmerman was going to be convicted. When he wasn't convicted, I sort of went ballistic, said Cullors. This generation goes ballistic in public on social media. Garza wrote the words Black Lives Matter on social media, and Cullors followed with the hashtag Black Lives Matter. Later that day, they decided to start a movement on the streets and online. To me, in Cullors' statement, it says right there they understand the importance of weaponizing social media. When it says that people go ballistic on social media, it's a fairly obvious observation, but as you can see in the quotes to follow, they understand the importance of getting social media on their side. Tometi, executive director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, an organization focused on Black and Latino immigration rights, joined them. She built the movement's social media presence, helping to engage and connect people. So Tometi says, at the same time, knowing that a guilty verdict wasn't going to mean justice, it wasn't going to bring back Trayvon Martin. So let's analyze that for a second. To me, that sounds like she let the tribal mask slip here. That justice is not the goal for their organization. It's never going to be justice. It's just vengeance. Vengeance without an end. And you can see that with the riots right now. They don't seem to have purpose. They don't seem to have any direction. So Garza's next to speak here. She said Patrice and Opal wanted to connect people because their lives depended on it. They wanted to reach black people in a society that doesn't try to do that. We each deeply believe that Twitter is not going to save us, said Garza. Twitter can be a vehicle that connects us and helps bring us together to strategize around how we're going to build the kind of power that we need to transform the world we live in. Aha. We can skim past the next couple of paragraphs as it details what happened in Ferguson as well. Cullors said that organizing the movement hasn't been easy, as women in leadership are still looked at skeptically. Garza said women aren't often seen as leaders and dealing with patriarchy is a challenge. I believe if Black Lives Matter was created by three black men, Opal, Alicia, and myself, wouldn't have to fight so hard to remind people we are the co-founders, Cullors said. Aha. I want you to think about that for a second. Just like how the politically correct ideology peeked its ugly head out in the early 90s, the initial BLM movement had a flash in the pan moment that fizzled out quickly after Ferguson and Baltimore in 2013. But it ended up kind of like a fire that didn't go out. It was more like one of those fires that smolders in your walls for days before erupting into a full-fledged 5-alarm neighborhood evacuator. BLM laid low, bided their time until the Floyd incident happened. And once that happened, shit kicked off hard. So enter this scumbag, Shaun King, more affectionately referred to Talcum X, everyone's favorite racially ambiguous conman and grifter that time and time again has pushed bullshit lies like the one Mike Cernovich references here. Shaun King, who led a rape hoax against a police officer, is now admitting he will begin falsely accusing Kenosha police officers as being responsible for the Jacob Blake shooting. So what Cernovich is referencing here is King falsely accused a police officer in 2018 of raping a woman, even though body cam footage discredited the accusation. As a result, King backtracked and deleted his social media posts concerning the incident. Shaun King regularly makes false allegations against police officers, in one case accusing an officer of rape. It was a hoax. King's rampage of falsities did not stop there, as he wrongly accused a man of murdering 7-year-old Jasmine Barnes in 2019. The man accused hanged himself in prison, as ABC 13 reported that Robert Paul Cantrell was wrongly accused in the shooting death of Jasmine earlier this year, stemming from a now deleted Twitter post by activist Shaun King. Cantrell resembled the sketch initially released of the suspect in Jasmine's murder. He was never charged. So there's a pretty easy parallel to draw here with this abject retard. Al Sharpton has done similar things. Crown Heights riots, Tawana Brawley falsities. This lump of shit truly is standing on the shoulders of giants. Now I want to go back quickly to the first article. I want to highlight this section here. Colors said that organizing the movement hasn't been easy, as women in leadership are still looked at skeptically. So if you've been paying attention to any of Shaun King's activities and actions since the riots began, I think I can make a compelling case that these riots are structurally linked and organized by one leader, and that is none other than Two-Fake Shakur himself, Shaun King. So I want everybody to cast their minds back to what seems to be years ago, but was merely 3 months ago, the death of George Floyd. First off, immediately Shaun hitched his wagon to the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor deaths. As we see down here, the Justice for Floyd petition has nearly 3.25 million signees to the petition. He has endorsed and has been taken care of by a group named Grassroots Law. Now, what exactly is Grassroots Law? Well, as you can see, fierce, smart, organized. We combine the best of grassroots organization with legal expertise to radically transform policing and justice in America. And we want you on our team. Okay. Working together for real change. No one should have to fight alone. Kind of like how Black Lives Matter is a very agreeable title for something, but I'm sure it's something a little bit more nefarious than that. Let's take a look of actually who's responsible for this group. Oh, well, would you look at that? Second name down there. None other than Snow J. Simpson himself. So the little bio reads, recently hailed by Time Magazine, Yuck, as one of the 25 most influential people in the world on the internet. Shaun King is a skilled organizer and the co-founder of Real Justice, which has helped elect brave new district attorneys all over the country. This dude's a regular fucking entrepreneur, so what's Real Justice all about? Okay, so I got their strategy page pulled up here. The long and short of it is, it's a PAC that looks to take over the elected branch of government and replace anyone they can from a judicial to a legislative level with progressive candidates that are easily moldable and sympathetic to causes championed by Shaun King and the like. So a little bit further, our tactics: distributed field organization, small dollar fundraising, digital media, candidate recruitment. So weaponizing the internet, hey? So I don't know how well you might remember your own high school history, but taking over the different branches of government with rabid ideologues sure sounds like some commie-ass shit to me. So now that we have King's ideology laid out and the groups that he's working with to subvert, let's take a look at what he's actually been doing since the riots. So post-hitching his wagon to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor with the petitions through Grassroots, wasn't one to stay out of the limelight for too long. King powdered his ass onto the old fucker in Buffalo that cracked his dome after accosting police. We'll read the post here. They are applauding the 2 Buffalo officers who assaulted the 75-year-old man. I am not sure one single moment of the entire uprising we are in right now gives us a better glimpse into the mind of the American police. What are they applauding? Their fellow officers assaulted a frail old man. They are literally treating these men like heroes. This is what we are up against. It's why we say we have to defund and shrink the power and budgets and size of the American police. This group is not a training or a workshop away from getting better. Yet another subversive tactic. Make all cops seem vicious, inhuman, and a threat to anyone at any time. But don't forget, donate and pledge allegiance. And then we take a look at something that initially caught my eye and kind of fanned the flames of this idea when it first happened. Statues of Jesus Christ are a form of white supremacy. Should be torn down? How the fuck do you make that leap? Let's take a look. Far left activist Shaun King on Monday said an image depicting Jesus as a white European should be torn down because they are a form of white supremacy. King made his remarks over a series of Twitter posts as historic monuments and statues have become the target of anger and vandalism during Black Lives Matter protests in the wake of George Floyd's death while in police custody late last month. Yes, I think the statues of the white European they claim as Jesus should also come down. They are a form of white supremacy, always have been. In the Bible, when the family of Jesus wanted to hide and blend in, guess where they went? Egypt, not Denmark. Tear them down. Yet again, the tactic of elevating wedge issues, like race in this instance, to undermine fundamental institutions of Western society. But honestly, just because he explicitly called for violence and destruction doesn't mean it will be carried out, will it? I think you know the answer. So not but 2 weeks later. According to the Washington Times, it would be quite a stretch to blame churches for George Floyd's death, police brutality, or Confederate memorials, yet houses of worship and religious statues are coming under attack in the protest mayhem. Last weekend, at least 4 Catholic Church-affiliated buildings and statues from Boston to Los Angeles were set on fire or vandalized. A blaze gutted a 249-year-old San Gabriel mission, once led by Father Junipero Serra, is being investigated as possible arson. So they claimed 4 instances here, and then we just take a little look further. 4 instances cited by the Catholic Action League left one out. The beheading of a Virgin Mary statue, found Sunday at St. Stephen Parish in Chattanooga, Tennessee. One man had the balls to call it out. Representative Chuck Fleischman, Tennessee Republican, called it a disturbing attack on Catholicism and religion. So perhaps that was just coincidental. But as you see here, there was another instance earlier in the month with the McCloskeys, which you might have heard about. This is a crime, and it's crazy. That's St. Louis. And the armed people you see are Mark and Patricia McCloskey, attorneys, who did this when protesters walked past their house on their way to protest the mayor. Protesters weren't even there for them. Context left out was this was a gated community and the gate was smashed down by these peaceful protesters. Not a single person threatened them. They pulled out their AR-15, assault rifle, and pistol and began aiming at them. So junior practitioner of law here states that it's against the Missouri Criminal Code. It says citizens are not allowed to exhibit any weapon capable of lethal use in any angry or threatening manner. Well, I hate to break it to Mr. King here, but when those weapons were illegally seized by the cops later that week, neither one of those weapons were in firing condition. So, more half-truths masquerading as whole lies. Go figure. So why do I bring this up? Surely something highlighted by Shaun King again couldn't possibly lead to further riots, but I think we all know that's not the case. In fact, the very next day, a larger group of people came back and explicitly attempted to trespass further into the McCloskey's residence, but at which time they had already hired private security, so mission failed. We'll get them next time. And also, aspiring attorney Shaun King here needs to figure out that their actions are also protected under Castle Doctrine, by the way. But you could also look at that last line as him just tipping his hand as to the Second Amendment free future that he aspires to. But, not to be outdone, that's Garrett Foster. He was a nonviolent demonstrator last night in Austin, Texas, and was shot and killed protesting for Black Lives Matter with his fiancée Whitney. Men tried to run protesters over with a car, then fired 8 shots at them, killing Garrett, who was pushing Whitney in a wheelchair. Tugs really on the heartstrings here for this Antifa sympathizer. That's just outright lies. Foster, interviewed earlier in the night, brandished a weapon he called an AK-47, and when Daniel Perry drove up to the crowd, he was surrounded, and Foster is shown pointing his rifle directly at Perry. Obviously, being surrounded and having your car assaulted by an angry mob, not to mention the gun being pointed at your face, Daniel Perry had every right to protect himself from what I'd consider a clear and present danger. So with that cleaned up, King's message already was signal boosted out to his 3.6 million followers on Instagram, 2.4 million on Facebook, and 1.1 million Twitter followers. What could have possibly happened next? Well, color me shocked. Austin protesters clash with police in the wake of Garrett Foster's death. So I understand that a vast majority of this has just been a recent history lesson, but I think it's very important because this leads to the straw that broke the camel's back for me. What really galvanized this idea? So the Kenosha Police Department. If you do not name the officers who brutally shot Jacob Blake on Sunday, we will simply begin naming officers from your department who may or may not be him. Fuck it. Your protection of his identity is unethical. What's his name? And then he goes on this rambly thread attempting to find any information about any of the officers out there. It's fucking disgusting. So we have Twitter here. They claim to be objective arbiters of free speech and expression, yet in practice only blame and ban anyone who doesn't bend the knee to their narrative. This tweet thread has been up since Tuesday evening. 6,300 retweets and 11,000 likes, if you can fucking believe it. This is a direct call to violence. If you think that even if Twitter decides to pull this down now, do you really believe that any of the radicals that follow King aren't going to take up the cause and carry out his wishes? I think the cat's out of the bag on this one. Like, fuck, man. All these police officers are now liable to have their and their families' lives endangered. It's fucking atrocious. So let's take a quick glance back at the first article here. In early May, King took to Facebook to threaten two men who were accused of shooting Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. To Gregory and Travis McMichael. I need you to know that I know where you live and where you're hiding out. Right now, I'm the only thing keeping about 150 different people from killing you. To the state of Georgia, hold these men accountable for the lynching of Ahmaud Arbery. I assure you, it is in your best interest. You know, if that doesn't give you chills, I don't think you're getting it. It also tells me that this is a man with power and authority. This is a man ready to release a reckoning upon his enemies. And it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but you mark my fucking words. This psychopath is coming, and it's only going to get worse until he is brought to task for his crimes. So why is it important to identify a leader of this movement? Why does the enemy need a name? Well, you need to know the unifying message. To me, clearly it's Marxism, being delivered through subversive techniques to a willing population. And as the saying goes, you cut the head off the snake, and the body will follow. I know this was a long one, guys, but it was a lot of research, and I really would appreciate it if you would share this around. I believe this is an important message, and one that's worth looking into further. So feel free to follow me on Parler at Don Khan-Swaylo. I'm still pretty new at the social stuff, but I swear to God, one day, very soon, we're going to be getting to the funny shit. This topic just hit me like a ton of bricks this morning, and I couldn't write anything else. So thanks again, and I've been Don Khan-Swaylo. So remember, guys, follow your gut, get after it. Take care.